Introduce the real expert here tonight, Coach Steve Cleveland. He knows all about the big dance. He coached the Cougars at the NCAA Tournament 2001, 2003, and 2004. And the thing that I love Coach Cleveland for is because he put BYU back on the map. And BYU was on the map. BYU had great history, but he took over a BYU program that was struggling. They brought the right man in for the job, and he said, let's get BYU back to where they belong, and miraculously turned them around, took them to 3 NCAA tournament bids. It's our pleasure to have my dear friend and one of the greatest coaches of all time at BYU for what he did for this program, Steve Cleveland. Welcome in, Coach.
Thank you. Great to be here with you. Love hearing what you had to say. You guys have done your homework here.
Yeah, no, we've been studying.
I know you have.
I feel really good about VCU. I've also done some work on Wisconsin. I don't feel quite as good, but I do feel. I was like, oh, is this going to be like Houston? And I don't feel like Wisconsin's like Houston. I don't think Wisconsin's in the same
not
level
the same
as Houston
level
right now. So Coach, let's go back to 2001.
Okay.
You're a head coach. It's your first NCAA tournament as a head coach, and it's BYU's first since 1995. So it had been a while. How nervous were you? What was it like for you as a coach and for the team to reach the show for the first time in a long time for the program and first time ever for you?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I made several mistakes during that experience, and I'll share with you some of them. But, you know, one of the things that we were so excited, you know, Coach Rose and our staff, Nate Call and Jetty, you know, everybody that was involved in it. And I can still remember the night before the tournament game, we had access to the arena for an hour and a half. I did one of the dumbest things you could ever do. I was so pumped inside, and so was the staff. You know, none of us had ever been through this thing. And we start going through our stuff. It turns into 5-on-5, get after it, get down. You know, the worst thing you could ever do. But we were so excited just about being there and thought, let's coach these boys up. You know, it was just stupidity. But I look back, and I'm not sure that Cincinnati would have still prevailed in whatever the circumstances were. But I learned a lesson that time. And Dave and I were together 2 more times, Dave Rose, where we changed a lot of things. And I know it really helped him going forward as a head coach here and the success that he had. So preparing for these big events and these big moments for the young people, you need to help those young people get relaxed and not make the moment so big. And we learned that. Despite the fact that we played UConn and Syracuse in games that came right down to the last 30 seconds and losses, I felt like we were way more prepared, and I felt better about what we did. It was disappointing, but I think we had a great showing in both of those games as a result of the things and experiences we learned from the first time.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, you talk about being prepared. Is there really anything, though, that can prepare you for what the opportunity is when you go into the NCAA tournament? Because you can go through all the X's and O's, but until you experience it, it's probably its own beast. And then once you're there, then you can learn from that. I mean, how prepared can you be for something like this that seems to be so crazy once it starts?
You know, I think for me personally, I think we talked about a couple of things, is that preparing young people to come out and perform and do something they've never done before, including a staff that's never done it before, we made mistakes, both groups. I think the result of the following 2 games that we played, we felt really good. I mean, McNamara goes for 40 plus.
Yeah, he was crazy in that game.
And we lit them up. In fact, Coach told me after the game, after we played them, he says, nobody has ever gotten me out of the zone.
Is this Jimmy Boeheim at the time?
I was going to tell you, Jimmy Boeheim. He came up to me afterwards. It made me feel good. He says, no one. You're the very first team in all my experiences of getting out of that zone. And the thing is, I can still remember Mike Hall going up and Duncan in the back. We're setting back screens on the baseline, and then we're just running them. And then guess what? They decided to play man-to-man defense with a really good team and a really athletic and long team. And, you know, we ended up losing by a couple. But he had made that change. We certainly would have won that game. So that's an example of preparation. But I did feel like through the process, we got better as coaches, and the team did too.
With that, so here's a question. some of these kids, they got a core kids that played in the NCAA tournament last year. But you got a coaching staff that hasn't coached together in the NCAA. There's some guys on the staff that have coached in an NCAA tournament.
Yes.
But not as a staff they haven't coached. Is that going to be a problem? Or is there enough experience in the room with the players and a couple of coaches that they maybe can approach this with a little more experience?
I think that they're going to be fine. And you're right. I mean, I think that, Kevin Young, he's learning things on the job. I mean, yes, he was in the NBA for many years, and that's a different animal. What we're doing, and the young people that you're coaching are more impressionable than those that are in the NBA, And so I think the things that they've controlled and I've watched and talked to, and, I've talked to Coach Young a couple of times, and just to kind of let him know of our support and love for him and things that he's doing. But he's got a great feel for people. Forget about the league. I've watched him interact with his players. And you especially watch players who've kind of messed up on the floor and not playing well. And it's not a berating, swearing, get into guys. It's like he'll hold them there just for a minute. You'll watch the guys come out. He'll just put his arm around them for a minute. And then the first thing that happens when he sits down is there's an assistant there, a support system. And I don't know what the NBA looks like. There doesn't seem to be a lot of support systems in the NBA. There are kind of independent contractors, but at the college level, the collegiate level, these young people are impressionable, and they struggle, and they take these things very personally. They come back home, all their buddies, people are on them. I'm not certain that kind of thing is happening in the NBA, but I think Coach Young has just done an amazing job, and I knew the idea of X's and O's, that's never an issue. But he went through some transition. I remember talking to him and saying, hey, this is a different animal.
And it's interesting because I love the fact that and I know you appreciate this too, that he came in and says, I don't know everything, so there's a lot of things I'm going to learn. And you remember this peel switch defense that they ran in the NBA, they came out, they're going to run it. And then they were struggling. And I still run it, but there was, I don't know how many games in, and they just said, too complicated. We don't have these kids as long as we have the NBA guys. And there's not the pressure that either you perform or you're just fired, right? So we need to really we can do some of these concepts, we need to simplify it. They put Moet Mag in the game. They started playing Trey Stewart more. They simplified it, and they've been a really good defensive team since. And I thought, man, we're not giving him enough credit for going into this thinking this is what I'm going to do, but along the way saying, I need to learn just like these players need to learn, and there's some things I'm going to change. They made a lot of changes to the way they're playing defense, and I think he's going to have to be that way and continue to be that way to have success, right?
Absolutely. He's going to have an experience here in a couple of days that is different than anything he's ever experienced. And neutral site, the fact that it's Denver, it's in the West Coast, I think there's some benefits for BYU. And I think that the fact that there are some seasoned veterans. I mean, can you imagine Dallin Hall not being here and all that pressure on Yegor?
Oh, man.
I mean, and Dallin is a dear friend, and he's had his ups and downs. But I look at him and his leadership, and in the important times, he's always in the game. I know you've all figured that out.
Yeah.
And it's taken some pressure off for Yegor. It's going to take Yegor a couple of years.
Right.
There's so much hype about that these guys are going to the league the next year. They're not going to the league. They need to learn how to play at this level.
Yeah.
And I don't know when they'll go out or if they'll even will go out. But I know this. I was talking to Dan Haynes about this as we were talking one day, and he goes, those guys need to play. He says, the worst thing that could happen, because they will get drafted.
Like if Yegor was out, he'll get drafted number 10, right?
Yeah, he'll be in the top 14 or 15, whatever it is.
And then he'll sit, right?
He'll sit and not play, and guess what? His chance is over.
Right.
It's over. You go to Europe and he can do his thing. Now playing here and maturing and developing, and you've got a staff. I mean, there's like 29 guys on the staff. There's something for everybody to do.
Oh, you wish you had half as many guys as KY has?
I'm not that smart. It's like I had a staff that we all got together, but that's the nature of how things are done now.
The good news is that and you know the Shep because you know the families and you took them on tours when they came around. Yegor's dad Vladimir and his mom, they're very sound with their thinking. Good family, And if he needs to come back, they'll tell him to come back. Like they don't, they're not going to see this. They're going to say what's best for his development. And one thing that Kevin Young always talks about is, man, the difference in college and pros is we actually get to practice. It's like once the NBA season starts, you just play. You just keep playing, and you got to figure it out. And sometimes it's not till after the season you figure it out. We get to practice a lot. I love being able to develop these guys. You don't get that in the NBA. Cannon Catchings, same thing. Comes from a really good family that's grounded with his Aunt Tamika, who knows basketball. And I think that those two families are patient enough that if it's not the right time for their long-term success, they'll give those kids good counsel. And you've met him, Shep. Would you agree with that? That's
100%. That's one of the things that the coaching staff had talked about, was that certainly we want to bring these guys in because they're talented basketball players, but we also want to bring them in is because they're really good fits for BYU. And it's the player themselves, it's the player's family, it's all of it combined. And I think one of the things that really impressed me at the very beginning of the year was, we talk about Yegor and being a lottery pick, and Cannon, possibly being a draft pick this year, and all these things. The one thing that they all asked, it wasn't about what can you do for me. It was, hey, is Dallin coming back? Am I going to be able to play with Richie? Like, that was their mindset. And when you've got young players that have that type of ability, when those are the questions they're answering, you've got some good ones.
And they're humble enough, because I've watched Yegor and Catchings make some really bonehead mistakes. Okay, they were just rookie mistakes. It's not that they're not trying and they don't have a great effort and a great attitude, but there are embarrassing moments on the floor. I've watched Yegor just kind of put his head down, sit down, and he's not looking to go back in the game. He's trying to figure things out. And that coaching staff has been really positive, really positive towards those young players. They're going to be great players. They just aren't there yet. But let's go back 7 months and all the articles and all the interviews and all this and that. And I'm just sitting there just kind of chuckling, like, come on. Okay, be real about this. These are 18-year-old young men, played in high school. They're no more. If they go out in the next year or two, they'll be in the league 2 or 3 years and they'll be playing in Europe. And I don't think either one of them wants to play.
That's not what they want long term.
That's not why they came here.
Well, I know that the BYU Nation out there loves hearing that perspective, Coach. And question from Linda Murray. She wants to know if you've talked to Kevin Young at all about your insights on NCAA Tournament. Have you had a chance to talk to him now that they're going into this tournament? I know you've talked to him throughout the year, but anything specific to the tournament?
So, well, we have had conversations, in fact, I'm going to text him tonight.
There you go.
And it won't be about X's and O's.
Right.
It'll just be about enjoying the moment and let the guys breathe and just let them go. And he's handled this group. And there's no way I could coach with 12 or 13 people on this. I'm not smart enough to do that. Okay, it's hard. But Kevin's got really great leadership skills. And he's able to know who does what and when. And I think he's just done a marvelous job with his staff. And I think the players just love him. And you can I watch them. I probably watch the bench and watch the coaches more than I do the players.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Of course, yeah.
We probably all do that.
We listen to the broadcasters.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why would that guy ever say that? I remember a time I said something dumb like that. Never recovered. So,
no.
Yeah, and you watch the coaches, which makes sense.
One of the guys, though, we've mentioned his name, but I don't. As much as he's been talked about, I still don't know if he gets the credit he has deserved for this season, and that's Richie Saunders.
Oh, yeah.
Where would this team be without Richie Saunders? He came out and he came out of the gate and was playing so well in scoring and so efficient, and his energy was always there. You knew you were going to get the energy and the hustle plays from him, but his scoring ability came out and you're thinking, wow, what a great start. Well, it wasn't a great start. This is just Richie all year long. He's been unbelievable.
No, he has carried personally this team. I mean, he is the reason where they are where they are. I mean, I've watched him play and develop. He's just learned to shoot the ball. He has so much confidence. He's got just perfect form, but he's not selfish. He's always making the extra pass. It's just fun to watch. They did a piece on BYU TV. Or somebody did a piece.
Yeah, we did a deep blue on him.
Oh my gosh, that probably brought tears to my eyes. It was like,
if you don't love him after you watch that.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
I told my wife, Kip, I said, you got to sit down and listen to this. I said, there's a reason. I had no idea anything about him, about his background, his family. And I thought, he's got a lot more going on than just the fact that he's got a pretty pure jumper.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, there's no guarantee they're in the tournament without Richie.
Yeah. Former BYU basketball coach Steve Cleveland's on the Wise Guys with us tonight, presented by Brady Plus, distributed by the Deseret News. What's been so difficult for BYU? They've gotten out of that first round. It's been hard to get out of the first round. They've only been to one Sweet 16 and one Elite 8. What do you attribute BYU's lack of success in the tournament to?
We haven't got Jimmer every year.
We got Jimmer, we got or Danny?
Or Danny. I'd have to go back and look at matchups and, what rank, for the most part, we won the league 2 or 3 times and we're still 11 or 12 seed.
Yeah.
And now the Sunday play came into play one time, but I don't think in the past there's been a great deal of respect because there hasn't been a lot of success. You got to go back to Coach Watts and you got to go back to Danny and some of the things that happened. But I think there was a lack of respect. And I say that publicly. I'm not coaching anymore and not going to upset anybody. But from afar, I felt that in talking to coaches and getting to know these guys and having conversations about what seeds, because we did have those conversations. When we go back after the Final Four, we'd have meetings, we'd talk about things. But I felt like that there wasn't an appreciation for what we have done. And it wasn't so much about Sunday play. It was a situation where, we had guys that competed. And I just don't think there was that respect. And I'm not sure why. I don't know why.
Yeah, and you had three 12 seeds when you were coaching.
Exactly.
And you probably at least 2 of those years deserved much better than that.
Exactly.
So now this year's team's a 6th seed. They're in the Big 12 now. More respect, right?
Yes.
And so you can finish tied for 3rd in the league, really.
Yeah.
Yep.
And get a 6th seed now. So as you look at this week's game, we talked a little bit about the matchup, a 6 versus 11 of ECU. Tell us about your thoughts on this matchup. Does BYU win this game? And if they win it, take us a little bit further. Can they match up with Wisconsin?
Well, yeah, that's another thing. I think in terms of their matchup with VCU, and I don't know if you guys have ever met Ryan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Delightful person. But I'm looking at, they're 28-6.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
But it's against who?
Right.
And I'm looking at VCU. They're 77 points a game. Their scoring margin, 14 or 15, is kind of what you would think in terms of that conference. But I think a couple of the things that really jump out to me is rebounding. Is so important in winning games at the NCAA level. Defending is so important. Listen, VCU is well coached. They've got a good team, and anything can happen on any given night. But they're playing a team that's well prepared and defends, and I just don't see VCU upsetting BYU. I just don't see that happening. I would be surprised by that. But I think the things that can kind of, if I'm Coach Young right now, and I'm with our guys, I don't make a big deal of this. I just don't. The moment is already like an elephant.
It's big enough all by itself.
All by itself. It's kind of like, let's stay with the fundamentals of what we've done. What have we been really good at? I'll tell you what they've been really good at. Making the extra pass.
Yeah.
I think what we've been really good about is a coaching staff that even though you had 2 high-profile players, sat a lot the second half of this season and realized that Dallin Hall and Richie Saunders were kind of the captains and the go-to guys. And so that says a lot about Coach Young and his staff, and that's the kind of feedback I'm sure he's gotten. But I like their chances. I don't know anything about Wisconsin. I know they're
big and long, like they always are.
Athletic.
Yep.
It's probably the pace of the game is not going to be what BYU likes. I don't.
Because they want to slow it down and plod. That's just the way he coaches.
That's just how he coaches. And to be honest with you, you go to this setting for all the guys out there, and there's a few of them that have played in the tournament, but there's a whole lot more pressure. And the question is, how quickly can you make a 3? If BYU comes out and knocks 2 or 3 threes down early in that game, there's no question in my mind that mojo's going. That they're going to be on their way to the second round.
Nice.
But don't discount VCU.
Yeah. Well, how much, especially with their defensive pressure, and that just wears down on offensive players, certainly, how much can the fact that Coach Young is using more players and they're producing? How much can that help to balance that out?
Well, because, when you get Mag on the floor, it's different than, someone else. And what Coach has done so well is he's every game's been different. Have you noticed that? It's not the same rotations. Hey, it's time for this guy to come in or time for this guy to come in. It's always been, who do I have there that can give me some rebounding? Is it Keita? Is it Traore, who we haven't scored in the low post for 12 minutes? It's probably time for him to come in. But then you have a rim protector, and you have a guy that just makes things happen. You talk about energy and highlights. A lot of those are Keita highlights. Yeah. Those are things that get you excited about it. But I think that this team has played 10 players. They're comfortable with it. There's no, frowny faces and upset about I'm not playing, why am I not? There's none of that on that bench. And that's done by coaches and good leadership in that team. But I think this team has the maturity. I think they have the maturity to certainly win this next game. And I don't know. So to say they can beat Wisconsin when I've never seen them play, that would be pretty stupid. But I will tell you this. I've watched Wisconsin over the years. We know how they're going to play. And that 3-ball will be the key to beating Wisconsin.
Yeah, and Wisconsin, here's what I've seen them play a couple times this year. They don't have Cryer and Sharp playing guard.
Right.
They're big and long, and they're going to cause you problems. You got to rebound. You got to block out. You got to be patient. They defend well because they're always fundamentally good defensively. But they don't have those two dogs playing guard. Yeah. And those dogs are the ones that gave BYU problems. Everybody else in the league, BYU handled fine.
Yes.
They played some great basketball against some great teams this year. So the one thing that I look at that stands out to me for VCU, they're number 12 in the country in offensive rebounding percentage.
Yes.
So 36.7% of the time when they miss, they get the board and they get a second opportunity. That's a lot. How do you stop a team that's so good at that from doing that? Because to me, that's the only chance VCU has. They're not going to go out and shoot BYU. I just don't think they will. But I worry that they get so many second chance opportunities, they can shoot a lower percentage than BYU and still be in the game. How do you stop them from doing that?
I don't know if you stop them, but you play differently as BYU. If BYU comes down and this game is all about the 3 early on and this not going down, this game's going to get slower and slower and slower, okay? Because that's to, Wisconsin's advantage in that situation. But you're right. I mean, it's how you're going to play. And you have to react. As coaches, you make a decision in the first 8 minutes of the game, and then you can see this thing's really slowing down. They're pounding it, and we're not shooting the 3. Then we've got to do some other things. And, when I was coaching, I always had 8 or 10 quick ISOs, quick hitters to get a basket coming out of a timeout, coming out of the halftime, or whatever it was. I used those when we were struggling to score because nature, which, just by nature, we're going to push it and we're going to get, we're going to up-tempo the game and we're going to shoot threes. And that could be the worst thing that you're going to try and do. What you're going to have to do is maybe try to play that same tempo, pound that thing inside, and be patient. And I think that's, if I had one word to use for my thoughts on this, is that coaching staff needs to be patient. That team needs to be patient. And that community, I know they're doing a lot of great things. But if you get away from patience and you get away from being in a hurry and trying to do things you haven't done before, that's kind of probably
that's a recipe for a disaster, right?
Well, but
not the best things to happen.
But I think it goes to a point that you made that he, speaking of Coach Young and the coaching staff, I don't think that they've done that all year. I think they've been very flexible in with whatever has gone on. I never felt like at any point they were panicking.
No.
They seemed, there were certain things that, you kind of scrambled to try and get to quickly sometimes, but I never felt like the moment was too big. Now, maybe it didn't end like we all wanted it to, right. But I never got the feeling that they were in a situation where the moment was too big, and I think that will serve them well.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I think the things that will be difficult, especially here, is that they've never been through, a lot of these players have never been through this experience. But they've won a lot of games, a lot of different ways. Yeah. And so I'm very confident that they'll win Thursday, and it is Thursday. Is
Thursday.
It Thursday? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Thursday and Saturday.
Now, my issue with that whole thing when they gave us a Sunday play, in the tournament. So it was one of those things we had to change all the seating.
Oh, yeah.
Because they got us playing on Sunday.
Yeah, I remember
I'm not
that.
sure how that happened. But yeah, I think they're prepared for this in this moment. And Coach Young and his staff, I've been around them enough and have great confidence in them. They'll be fine.
Yeah. So John Crowder on the chat says, I don't think we should even talk about playing Wisconsin. So he doesn't want bad karma. He says we should forget about the second game and focus on getting the VCU game win. VCU saw what Houston did and are ready for us.
Hey,
and they have time to prepare. So
we can talk about it.
No, we're not playing. We're
not playing and we're not coaching.
When we were playing and coaching, it was one game at a time. But when we're doing radio and television and podcasting, I want to know who they're going to play in the Sweet 16. That's what I want to know. So,
Exactly.
Hey, one thing that stands out to me. So the thing that stands out to me for VCU is that offensive rebounding percentage, which is really good, top 12 in the country. Thing that has stood out for me for BYU this year is in really difficult games, when they're struggling to figure out what to do offensively, they've been able to consistently get stops and stay in the game, which I could not say about last year's team. If they really struggled offensively, teams ran away from them. This year, I mean, they've had these really low-scoring first half games, like Iowa State, or Arizona, where they come out and score 50 plus in the second half because they make some adjustments, maybe in the last 4 minutes of the half, and then come out of the locker room and really go. But their defense, they have figured out how to go, okay, ball's not falling. We better figure out how to play great defense to stay in this game. And they've been in games even when they're not shooting it. I think, doesn't that serve them well in the NCAA tournament?
It does. Let me say this, too, that your offense has a lot to do with how you defend. Mm-hmm. And so you've got a younger team here that if they get away from the things they've been doing, and I just don't see this happening, but when you're taking into the shot clock shots, you're in a situation where there's a little bit of panic. That impacts your defense. Now, if you're – and this team shoots the three so well, and I don't want to jinx them in any way, but if you're going to that three ball, what does that do when you miss? How hard is it to defend a team when those things, that long rebound, we're in transition, even though they're not a transition. We're saying, well, Wisconsin's not a transition. There'll be a transition team if you're taking threes.
And they're bouncing way the heck out there.
They're going to go. They're going to run with everybody. They got athletes.
Yeah.
That's just not the style of their play. So shot selection, really important in the playoffs. I mean, I've seen teams shoot their way out of it and then thinking that they're not playing good defense. Well, it started with bad offense.
How much does it affect a team? And I guess it's whether or not you are willing to let it bother you is probably the right answer. But there's never been, certainly Jimmer's years, the eyes were on BYU. But now the eyes are on BYU for different reasons. Because they're doing things that nobody's ever seen BYU do or think that BYU could do. So obviously we've seen throughout the entire year, anytime somebody talks about Yegor, they're talking about, future lottery pick. And now you've got the number one player in the country that they'll be talking about, AJ DeBonsa, and the fact that he's coming. You have all of these eyes on BYU that probably haven't been paying as close of attention to the Cougars before. How much do you allow that stuff to even be a part of anything?
Well, first of all, that was created by two things. Transfer portal and NIL, okay? Those two things changed everything. So I don't believe that this BYU team will be impacted by all of these things that, we've talked. I just don't think they will be. I think there's a maturity. I think that even though Richie is not getting the huddle and get the guys together, that's more, other people's responsibilities. But I think this team has the maturity and leadership to not fall prey to that type of thinking where, we're this, that. Hey, listen, people ask me if Yegor and Ketchings are going to leave. I said, why would you leave when you're going to be playing with the best, on paper, the big-time recruit? I want to play with AJ.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? I want to be in an Elite Eight team or a Final Four team. And that happened, when that happens, so I think they're doing it.
So you don't think it's added pressure?
No. First of all, these are 18 and 19-year-old kids. Okay, they are thinking about where we're going to eat after practice. Come on, man.
I like that. Hey, former BYU basketball coach Steve Cleveland on the Wise Guys, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wiseguys.com. Find us at all those places. And then tomorrow, make sure you find the podcast on wherever you get your podcasts. We're speaking a little bit about let's look forward a little bit because AJ Devanza comes next year. We just mentioned him, right? It's crazy to think that the number one like if the NBA still drafted kids out of high school, he'd be the number one pick in this year's draft. That's crazy. BYU basketball changes in what ways when he steps on campus next year, along with his teammate, 7-footer Xavion Stanton, who's also a top 25 player in the country.
Lots of expectations.
Yeah.
Okay, and rightfully so. And I think the one thing that's really good is that you now have outstanding players, young men that have been through that. AJ is just not going to come here and have all the answers. Okay. Yes, he can solve a lot of problems for this team. He's going to have an immediate impact. But he's going to have moments and nights too. He is 18 years old, and he'll have a huge impact, and this team will be a lot better. But it's just not going to go perfectly for him, okay? And I think that's where your juniors and senior leaders develop relationships. That's the first thing that Dallin Hall and Richie Saunders need to become good friends in the off season with these guys and get to know each other. There's a trust, and when you have that trust, everything's possible. So. It'll be crazy. It'll be crazy because of the media.
Everybody, it'll be a circus around it,
It'll
right?
be a circus. And Kevin Young and Brian and whoever is handling all of athletics, they'll take care of that. They'll protect these young men, and that there isn't a circus here.
How big of a deal do you think it's going to be? Because obviously BYU's first year in the Big 12, there was 18 conference games. This year there was 20. And the coaches didn't like the fact that you didn't have some rest throughout the year. Well, they're going to go back to 18 conference games next year. How big of a deal is that? Good or bad?
Scheduling is really important at any level. I mean, high school, junior college, Division I. But I think that when I sat down to create a schedule, I knew if we were playing, if it was a preseason game against New Mexico and that was going to be a great – I wasn't going to have before that, Utah State, and then we're gonna go to New Mexico in 3 or 4 difficult games. You need to slice that thing up so that, okay, I'm looking at my schedule, I'm putting my schedule together. There's going to be 2, 3, maybe 4 teams that are going to help me get with the tournament and my seeding, and then everybody else we will pound. Mm-hmm. I mean, it gives me an opportunity to watch 10 or 11 of my guys play. I can get guys coming off the bench and that haven't played hardly. So you develop your team, you get the confidence, and know that at the end of the day, you can really schedule yourself out of a season if you stack that thing up. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know how they do it in football because there's only 1 or 2 soft games. Yeah. Everything else.
You play 1 good non-conference and then 2 easy ones, and then in the league it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. And that's how the basketball program is too now.
Right, because of the league. So I was going to ask you this. I've been excited to ask you this. So the Courier-Journal in Lexington this last week, they reported that Kentucky paid BYU $6 million to buy out Mark Pope's contract. I did not know that until I read it. Then it got confirmed by their legal office. I was like, what? So Mark goes to Kentucky. They pay BYU $6 million, and then Kevin Young comes in. And they get this. Is that the best deal of the century?
Well, first of all, how did that get out?
Yeah, how does that get out? But then the media asks, and Kentucky's got to they're not going to lie. They confirm it. I'm like, whoa, wow, who negotiated that deal for BYU? That was a deal.
Can you look back at BYU and over the years and where we've come from and where we are now, and like we talked about it earlier with NIL and transfer portal, and somebody's going to get $7 million next year, and that's mind blowing, And you have to wrap your arms around all of that. You've got Kevin Young, who was in the NBA. There have been a lot of things that have changed. Most of it for good, but you can get carried away with it. But I think you have staff members. Kevin Young can't wear this hat and that hat and that hat. Maybe there's a reason he's got 16 assistants.
That's right. There's a good reason. He's got a GM that does nothing but deal with all the business part of it in NIL.
Exactly.
All that. And looks at value of players. You have to these days,
and
right?
Strength and conditioning guy, I've gotten to be good friends with him and he's crazy. But I will tell you this, it's different.
Focused on different specialty areas.
Specialty area. I thought, man, this is really good.
Well, we have to do this because we asked you to prepare 5 things. So before we let you go, we got to do this 5 questions for Steve. 5 questions, by the way, presented by Strategy Square. And Strategy Square's been a great partner of ours. 5 greatest NCAA tournament games you have ever seen. So, and you've got them. And do you want to go? Do you want to go number 5 down to 1? Start with the.
You want to build it to the number 1?
Or are they in no specific order?
Here's the thing: the audience is probably not going to recognize a lot of these people. In terms of stuff that was happening back in '88 or '79.
You'd be surprised.
Okay.
We got.
So
this audience is, and by the way, they're in from San Antonio. I still haven't seen. Where's Panama tonight? Come on, Panama, let's go. And Japan, let's go. But Cedar Park, Texas is in the house. We got fans that are on this that will remember.
We'll start from the bottom.
5. Okay, we'll start with number 5. Number 5.
It was my first Final Four in person, 1998, Kentucky over Utah.
Oh, that's your first Final Four person. And Utah was rolling back there with Rick, right?
They were.
Okay, so 98, Kentucky, Utah, in-person Final Four. Okay, number 4.
1982, North Carolina versus Georgetown.
Wait, was Michael Jordan in that game?
For obvious
And
reasons.
you were at that?
Yes. So here's the deal. Just another story we can't take. So 17-footer to beat Georgetown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not see this one, but it's still 1979 Magic versus Bird, Michigan State versus Indiana State.
I watched that. That was number
Center.
3? That's
Yeah,
number 3?
yeah, yeah.
That was in the Huntsman Center.
Huntsman Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, one of the greatest of all time, Magic versus
Exactly.
Bird, right? And then that thing just carried into the NBA for decades.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay.
2016, this is Jay Wright's Villanova team. I can still remember the buzzer beater. It wasn't a 15-foot shot. And then Chris Jenkins from deep hits it. Greatest ending of a national championship game.
So Villanova.
I watched that on TV, but I did not see it in person.
So the 16 Villanova
Yes.
championship, amazing.
I mean, you hit. It was a difficult shot, long shot.
Yeah.
And the place just went.
I'm excited for your number 1.
Yes, 1998. Valpo
Yeah.
over Ole Miss. Bryce Drew hits a buzzer beater. Not only that, but the execution to get that shot. I still kind of remember watching that and thinking, "Oh my heck, this is unbelievable."
Hey, here's the thing. I'm old though.
Yeah.
But I remember every one of these.
They're good.
So you know what? Can I give an honor? Tell me if this is on your honorable mention. North Carolina State, Jimmy V's win
Yes.
with Lorenzo Charles
Yeah.
with the missed shot, and he puts it in, and that was down in the pit.
Yeah.
In Mexico.
That was Coach Rose.
Yeah, Coach Rose.
That's right, Coach Rose's Houston team.
Yes.
Coach Rose's Houston.
So Houston with the 5
set-
Slamma Jamma and NC State and Jimmy V.
Dave was the captain of that team.
Yeah.
But what's tragic is that thing wasn't even going to there. It was
over.
a foot and a half right of the rim.
Yeah, it wasn't even close.
It wasn't even close.
And Lorenzo Charles just grabs it, puts it in.
If it hits any part of the rim, they're going overtime.
Right. Yeah, that one was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
I think my 1 has to be Magic and Bird.
Yeah.
Just because that was
Two of the greatest
all time
ever.
Coach, we love having you in.
You're welcome.
It's so fun to have you, and we cherish our friendship and we cherish your knowledge, and we love it when you come in studio with us.
Thanks. No,
and by the way, Andy Rosenberg's in the house
Where's
tonight.
Andy?
So
Andy,
Andy,
come
come in
over
and
here.
just say hi for just 1 second, because Andy's always he's not in front of the camera ever. Andy Rosenberg, one of the greatest producers in the history of television sports, and Andy, come in here.
First of all,
Andy has done. So Andy and I worked together at NBC Sports. We did the A10 package together for a number of years, and I think we did some Mountain West Conference championships maybe back in the day together. We did Jimmer and Kawhi year. We did together, but Andy has done every major sporting event there is and multiple Olympic games, and has been one of the greatest producers in the history of sports. And he's just sitting in here. He's just sitting in here tonight.
I just come to see friends.
Andy, share 3 or 4 of your greatest moments because you're looking at it from a
What's the greatest game you've ever produced?
Golly.
No pressure.
I'm a Red Sox fan.
Yeah.
Okay? 1986 World Series.
And you were producing the World Series.
I was the replay director for that.
Oh, wow.
Worst night of my life. Game 6. The whole season, Buckner's pulled in the 7th inning for Davey Stapleton. That game, what happens? So this is a story that no one knows, by the way. This is news.
Okay,
No
here we go.
service.
You've only heard it
We're
here.
breaking stuff here.
Okay. Tom Seaver came to work for us several years later. Tom was on the team but couldn't play in the playoffs because he came to the team after September 1st deadline. I said to Tom, okay, Tell me, what went on then? He said, I'm sitting in the middle of the bench. Buck is down there. Mac is down there. It's time for Mac to walk down to Buck and say, okay, you're out. Stapleton's in. He says, Buck starts walking this way. Mac starts walking this way. They meet in front of me. And before Mac can open his mouth, Billy says, Skip, I want to be in when the game finishes. Billy, you're my guy.
He leaves him in.
Leaves him in.
Then the ball, oh no.
Worst coaching decision ever.
Wow.
Worst coaching decision ever.
So I have to say though, Andy, I'll get hold of you, and I still have your number, and I want you to come in, and we're going to go reminisce about some of the things you've done, because you have done some of the greatest sporting events in history, and
I've had some fun.
I want to bring you in and come on the show and spend a half an hour or so with us and talk about some of those.
I've had some fun.
You have to do that.
Yeah, it'd be so fun.
I mean, his track and field stories.
Well, when
are
Andy walked in, I was just like, oh, and here just walks into our studio one of the greatest producers in the history of sports. So many years at NBC, and I loved working with you. Everybody would. The first time I ever worked with Andy, like, well, Andy Rosenberg's producing, so you better watch out because he can get going. And Andy, I don't know if it's just because he knew me, because I'm a Utah guy, because we're of the same faith or something. Andy always treated me so great. They're like, "Are you friends with Andy?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, yeah, we can tell. So he always took care of me. So and I love you, brother. So we're going to bring you back. Thanks so much for coming in, Coach Cleve. Andy, thanks for coming with Coach. Two legends in the house for us tonight. Andy Rosenberg and Steve Cleveland. So thanks for coming, guys. And Andy, we're gonna get you back on the show.
Yeah.
So
Thanks,
great
Coach.
deal. So thanks so much.
Thanks
you guys
for
just
being here.
and the cool part about this is so casual. Like Coach just walks out and says goodbye. So that's podcasting. That's podcasting. Great to see you, Andy. Thanks so much.